Miguel Serrano had always believed that money could solve almost anything. At 42, he'd built an empire from lines of code and calculated risks, turning a modest startup into a tech giant that employed thousands across 3 continents. His penthouse occupied the top 2 floors of Torre Celestial, Barcelona's most iconic building, a glass and steel monument to modern ambition that pierced the evening sky like a shard of frozen light. That November night, as he stepped out his car near Luz de Mar, the city's most exclusive rooftop restaurant, he was already mentally rehearsing his pitch to the Japanese investors waiting inside. The deal would expand his company into Asian markets, a move his board had been pushing for months. He adjusted his collar against the wind and started toward the entrance when he saw them. 3 small figures huddled together on the stone bench just outside the restaurant's glowing entrance. They wore thin jackets that did nothing against the Mediterranean winter wind, and their faces were buried in each other's shoulders. The oldest one, a girl with dark braids, looked up as he passed. Her eyes held something he hadn't seen in years of boardroom negotiations and investor meetings. Pure, unguarded desperation mixed with a child's stubborn hope. Miguel stopped. He should have kept walking. The investors were waiting. The deal was crucial, and getting involved in whatever situation these children were in would only complicate an already complex evening. But his feet wouldn't move forward. Instead, he found himself approaching the bench. The girl with the braids straightened protectively, pulling her sisters closer. The middle one had paint stains on her fingers, he noticed, and the smallest clutched a worn notebook covered in careful pencil sketches of buildings. "Are you waiting for someone?" Miguel asked, keeping his voice gentle. The oldest girl lifted her chin. "Our father is coming back for us. He just needed to handle some things first." Her Spanish carried the lilting accent of someone who'd grown up in the Gothic Quarter, but her words trembled at the edges. Miguel glanced at the restaurant entrance, then back at the girls. They'd been crying. He could see the dried tracks on their cheeks. "When did he leave?" 3 days ago, the middle sister said quietly, "after Mama's funeral." Something cracked in Miguel's chest, a feeling he'd carefully avoided since his own parents passed years ago. He'd fill that emptiness with work, with success, with a cold satisfaction of watching his company grow. But looking at these 3 children, abandoned in the shadows of a place where people spent more on a single meal than most families earned a month, he felt a protective instinct he thought he'd lost. "What are your names?" he asked, crouching down to their eye level. "I'm Isla," the oldest said. "That's Laura and that's Noah. We're 9 years old. All of us." "Triplets," Miguel said softly. He glanced at his watch, then made a decision that would alter the trajectory of his carefully planned life. "I have a dinner meeting inside. Important people are waiting for me. But I think you 3 should join us." Isla's eyes widened. "We don't have money for a place like that." "You're my guests," Miguel said simply. "Come on. It's too cold out here." The restaurant manager's expression shifted from polite welcome to barely concealed horror when Miguel walked in with 3 obviously homeless children. "Senor Serrano, your party is waiting in the private room, but I'm afraid—" "These are my special guests," Miguel interrupted, his tone leaving no room for argument. "Please set 3 additional places at our table." The walk through the restaurant turned heads. Wealthy diners paused mid-conversation, forks suspended over plates that cost more than the girls' jackets. But Miguel kept his hand on Isla's shoulder, guiding them through the maze of white tablecloths and crystal chandeliers to the private dining room where 4 Japanese executives waited in expensive suits. "Gentlemen," Miguel said as he entered, "allow me to introduce Isla, Laura, and Noah. They'll be joining us this evening." The investors exchanged confused glances. Tanaka-san, the lead negotiator, raised an eyebrow but recovered quickly with polite bow. Whatever they thought, they were too professional to object. Throughout dinner, Miguel watched the girls more than he listened to the business discussion. They ate slowly, carefully, as if afraid the food might disappear. Laura stared at the abstract paintings on the walls with an intensity that suggested she was memorizing every brushstroke. Noah sketched in her notebook, occasionally glancing up at the room's architectural details. And Isla sat very straight, her protective gaze never leaving her sisters. When dessert arrived, Tanaka-san leaned toward Miguel. You have kind heart, he said quietly in accented English. In Japan, we say such kindness returns threefold. Miguel smiled, but inside, he was calculating. The girls needed help. Real help, not just a warm meal. After the investors left with handshakes and promises to finalize the deal, Miguel turned to the triplets. Where were you living before your mother passed? He asked gently. Isla's composure finally cracked. In an apartment near the Sagrada Familia. But Papa couldn't pay the rent after Mama got sick. He said he had to find work, that he'd come back for us, but... Her voice broke. He's not coming back, is he? Miguel had built his success on reading people, on knowing when someone was bluffing or hiding something. These girls had been surviving on hope, but even they were starting to see the truth. Let's get you somewhere warm tonight, he said. We'll figure out the rest tomorrow. He took them to his penthouse in Torre Celestial. As they rode the private elevator up, Noah's eyes grew wide. Papa helped design this building, she whispered. He used to take us to see it when it was being built. He was so proud. Miguel felt something shift in his understanding. Your father is Rafael Torres? The three girls nodded in unison. Rafael Torres had been the brilliant architect whose innovative design had made Torre Celestial possible. But he disappeared from the project before completion, and Miguel had never known why. Now, looking at these children, he was beginning to understand. Rafael must have sacrificed everything to care for his dying wife. And when that wasn't enough, when the medical bills piled up and the grief became unbearable, he'd made the unforgivable choice to leave his daughters behind. That night, Miguel set up the guest rooms and watched as the girls fell asleep almost instantly, their small bodies finally relaxing in the safety of soft beds and warm blankets. He sat in his study until dawn, researching, making calls, pulling strings he'd cultivated over years of business. By morning, he had answers he wished he didn't have. Rafael Torres had died in a construction accident in Madrid 2 days after abandoning his daughters. He'd been working under an assumed name, probably running from debts. The authorities hadn't connected him to the three girls sleeping in Miguel's guest rooms. Miguel had faced difficult presentations before, had delivered bad news to shareholders and employees. But nothing prepared him for walking into that sunlit bedroom and telling 3 9-year-old girls that both their parents were gone. Isla listened with a terrible stillness. Laura cried quietly into a pillow. Noah just stared at her notebook, her pencil moving across the page in small mechanical circles. What happens to us now? Isla finally asked. Miguel had spent the entire night asking himself the same question. He had no experience with children, no family of his own, and a life built entirely around work and solitude. Every rational part of his mind said to call social services, to let the professionals handle this. But he remembered Isla's eyes outside the restaurant, remembered the way these girls had sat at that dinner table with quiet dignity despite everything they'd lost. Remember Rafael Torres' tower reaching toward the sky, like a testament to what a man could build when he had something to protect. You stay here, Miguel said, with me, if that's what you want. Over the following weeks, Miguel discovered that raising 3 girls was nothing like running a company. There were no quarterly projections for grief, no strategic plans for healing. But slowly, carefully, they built something new together. Isla's love for music emerged one afternoon when she found Miguel's forgotten piano. Her fingers found melodies that made his chest ache. Laura turned a spare room into a studio, covering canvases with colors that seemed to capture everything she couldn't say in words. And Noah filled notebooks with architectural sketches, her designs growing more confident each day, carrying her father's gift forward. The adoption process took months of paperwork, home visits, and court appearances. Miguel hired the best lawyers, but what mattered more was the way Laura started calling him Miguel Papa, and how Isla taught him to braid hair, and how Noah showed him her sketch of a building she wanted to design someday, a children's shelter that would make sure no kid ever had to spend a night in the cold. One evening, while sorting through the few possessions the girls had salvaged in their old apartment, Miguel found a sealed letter addressed to whoever cares for my daughters. The handwriting was shaky, written by someone who knew they were dying. Inside, their mother had written about a small trust fund, money she'd saved before the illness, hidden away in an account the creditors never found. It wasn't a fortune, but enough to secure the girls' education, their future. She'd also included something else, a description of each daughter's gifts, her hopes for who they might become, and a simple truth that hit Miguel harder than any business loss ever had. Whoever you are, thank you for seeing them. Thank you for staying when others walked away. Miguel read the letter 3 times, then walked to where the girls were making dinner together. A chaotic process involving too much flour and constant laughter. They'd insisted on learning to cook, taking turns each week, filling his pristine kitchen with messes and warmth he'd never known he needed. Isla was conducting Laura and Noah like a symphony, orchestrating their movements with exaggerated seriousness that made them all giggle. They'd come so far from those shivering figures on a cold bench, yet the memory kept him humble, reminded him that fate sometimes disguised its greatest gifts as inconvenient interruptions. He'd thought that night outside Lou's tomorrow was about him saving them. But watching them now, listening to their laughter echo through rooms that had been empty for so long, he understood the truth. They'd saved each other. 3 girls and a man who'd forgotten that the things you can't calculate or control are often the ones that matter most.